Okay, Jorge Uginushla, on behalf of Team Ireland in California, Enterprise Ireland, Science Foundation Ireland, Tourism Ireland, and the Consulates General in San Francisco and Los Angeles, I want to welcome you to our virtual St. Patrick's Day business breakfast. I also want to start by thanking Aer Lingus for their support at our event today. You will have seen there's return flights for one lucky person out there, and we'll announce that person later on this morning. It has already been a hugely busy morning here, virtually in California, with over 260 people attending the event, 232 still online at the moment, hundreds of conversations, hopefully lots of cups of tea, and lots of business done and connections between our network in Ireland and in California. The level of activity is unsurprising, given the enormous energy and dynamism in the Ireland-California economic relationship. Ours is a deep trade, business and investment relationship that is building in real time. Many of you will have seen the Stripe announcement yesterday. Irish companies continue to demonstrate huge global ambition as they open new offices in California at rapid pace, and they succeed in this world-leading innovation ecosystem. Irish research centres are also partnering with California companies. For example, just this week, Cobalt Metals here in Berkeley and the ICRAG SFI Research Centre will expand research activities in critical raw materials. As both Ireland and California look towards building back after a very difficult year, we do so with optimism that it will be a green and gold recovery. And how better to celebrate St. Patrick's Day than to be joined by leaders from Ireland and California. It is my great pleasure to welcome Tánaiste and Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment, Leo Varadkar TD. Tánaiste is, of course, no stranger to California, having visited in 2013 as Minister for Transport, Tourism and Sport. A successful visit ultimately led to 2 direct Aer Lingus flights between Ireland and California. In November 2017, he visited California on his first official visit to the US as Taoiseach. He also presided at the opening of the new Consulate General in Los Angeles in September 2019. So every time he comes, something good happens, and hopefully on this virtual visit, it'll be the same. We are also joined by the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of California, Eleni Kounalakis. It's been my great honor to meet with her and to hear from the Lieutenant Governor since she took office in 2019. Before that, she served as US Ambassador to Hungary under President Obama. Owing to her Greek heritage and time served in Europe, Lieutenant Governor brings a sincere knowledge of, interest in, and passion for transatlantic relations. Lieutenant Governor in January just launched an investment guide for Irish companies looking to scale their operations in California, and we're so lucky to have her with us today. Finally, putting the questions to our leaders this morning is Diane Dwyer, a Bay Area native who credits the Irish gift of storytelling for her success in journalism and teaching. She's particularly proud of her Irish citizenship, thanks to her 4 grandparents who were born and raised in Ireland. Diane is a 2-time Emmy Award winner and has received awards from the New York Film Festival, Associated Press, Society of Professional Journalists, and others. She started her career in Butte, Montana, the most Irish city in the US, the 5th province of Ireland, I think it's also been called, where she survived the 2nd coldest winter on record there. She's most of her broadcasting career at KTVU Channel 2 and NBC Bay Area, covering everything from Winter Olympics in Italy to presidential inaugurations. Diane is currently a faculty member at the Berkeley Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley, her alma mater, where she's been for the last 11 years. So without further ado, I want to thank our attendees and thank you, our speakers, and I'm going to pass it on to Diane and to everyone else. Bun Seltastu. Good evening.
Oh, thank you so much, Robert. And what a fun introduction of everybody. And Tánaiste, you have some a pressure today to come up with something pretty great to announce. So I'll give you a little time. But it's a lovely way to kick off St. Patrick's Day, week, month, depending on how you celebrate. For those of us Irish Americans attending today, we all have our stories, right, of how much more Irish we are than our friends or neighbors. It's a source of pride, and we claim it in all kinds of ways. How many grandparents we have that I threw out there, how we can mimic the Irish accent, which I'm terrible at, and the story. So I'm going to tell one quick story because I can't help myself. But my favorite is my story of my grandmother leaving for America. She was 16 years old, like many others during that time, right? She went to the tiniest of chapels, if you know it, St. Finbarr's in Gugambara, to pray. Little could she have imagined, she ended up here in San Francisco, where I am, She'd never see her parents again, but she would always keep those connections to Ireland through her life. Thanks, honestly, to the many ways that California and Ireland are linked. And that's partly why we're here today, and a big focus of our conversation, the business bonds and other bonds that tie us. So before we jump into a bunch of questions, I thought it might be nice to start with just some brief introductions of each. So Lieutenant Governor, why don't we start with you, and welcome, happy St. Patrick's Day, and thank you for being here.
To be with all of you today, and especially, of course, with you, Tánaiste, again, to help mark St. Patrick's Day, which I think it's tomorrow, not today. So I'm not wearing my green yet, but I will. But it was such a wonderful pleasure to welcome you, Tánaiste, to Los Angeles 2 years ago when you opened Ireland's new consulate general there. We are very proud in California to have 2 Irish consulates general here. And I'm very grateful to Consul General Robert O'Driscoll in San Francisco for inviting me to participate in today's event. Here in California, we are very proud of our diversity. 27% of us are foreign born, and half of us, myself included, have at least one immigrant parent. Our diversity makes us stronger, younger, more innovative, and more resilient, and has been a primary driver of California's economic success. There is no better example of this than our Irish American community, which represents a major and active segment of our diverse society and has since the very founding of our state. California is home to the largest number of Irish-born and Irish Americans on the West Coast, and the largest overall number of people with Irish descent in any U.S. state, with 2.5 million in the last census. Approximately 8% of the population of California and 10% of the Bay Area identify as being of Irish descent. Of course, Irish coffee was introduced to America in San Francisco at the Buena Vista, a great example of the impact of Irish culture on our beautiful state. So today, Ireland and California enjoy a $3 billion two-way trading relationship. In 2020, we exported nearly $1.1 billion in goods to Ireland and imported $1.9 billion worth of Irish products. In addition, Irish investment in California is significant for a country of its size, supporting over 460 firms that provide over 30,000 jobs in our state, generating more than $2.8 billion in wages. Now, Ireland, dozens of major California-based companies are present, including Adobe, Airbnb, Google, LinkedIn, Intel, and Wells Fargo, and they employ more than 36,000 Irish nationals. But our relationship is about much more than these statistics. It is about shared values, a shared spirit of innovation, a shared future-oriented outlook that makes our collaboration so natural and so fruitful. A great and recent example of this is the announcement just last weekend that the digital payments firm Stripe, dual headquartered in San Francisco and Dublin, has been valued at $95 billion following its most recent fundraising. Can you get his team to mute Leo when he's not talking? One of the most valuable private businesses to come out of Silicon Valley. This company was founded here in California in 2010 by 2 young Irish brothers, Patrick and John Collison, and its valuation has tripled in less than a year. It now operates in 42 countries, including 31 in Europe, and this newest expansion will result in over 1,000 new jobs in Ireland. California is proud to be the place in America where young entrepreneurs like the Collisons continue to come to realize their dreams and to build a better future for all of us. They're great examples of what is possible when we combine the dynamism, the optimism, and the opportunities that exist in both California and Ireland. And with that, Diane, I will hand it back to you and just say how much I am looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And it is really incredible connections, right? On so many levels, on the business level as well as personal. And you know, we talk about folks wanting, say, identify as Irish descent, it's almost 100% in some ways, right? We all want a little bit of that in different times. Same with the Greek descent, for that matter. So, Tánaiste, how about to you? We'd love to hear from you, the Irish perspective. Thank you for being here, and it's good evening, I think, for you. Correct?
Sorry, say that again. The last bit.
Just that it's good evening to you rather than good morning.
Well, it's just after 4 p.m. here, so yeah, whatever.
Good afternoon.
So just very briefly, well, thanks Diane for having us, and Lieutenant Governor, really appreciate you joining us. It's good to see you again. We met on my last visit to California, and hopefully we'll meet again whenever it's possible to get there again. Really just one or two things I wanted to say. You touched on the Stripe announcement earlier on this week, which was really good news, a really great story. Two brothers from Ireland who set up their tech firm in San Francisco, now valued at $80-90 billion, reinvesting back home in Ireland and helping Dublin, my home city, to become the tech capital of Europe in the way that Silicon Valley and Northern California is the tech capital of the world in many ways. The relationship that we have really is a two-way one. Ireland's a very small country, but there are 10,000 people, 10,000 California residents who work for Irish firms in about 200 locations across the state. And of course, there are about 40,000 Irish people here in Ireland working for firms that are headquartered in California. And Ireland is unusual in Europe and unusual in the world in that our economy actually grew last year, notwithstanding the fact that we're facing a really tough pandemic. And actually our domestic economy, retail, construction, tourism, hospitality, as you'd expect, shrunk by about 5%. But we had economic growth overall, and that was largely down to some of our own big companies that export food and drink. We produce 9 times as much food and drink as we need, and believe it or not, we do export alcohol. We don't drink it all. And then, of course, the presence of some really big American companies, some of the tech companies, mainly based in the West Coast, and some of the pharma companies and medical devices companies as well that did well in the pandemic, and that helped our economy grow last year. Although the experience for people is a very different one, of course, because a lot of people are out of work because the businesses they work for were first forced to close by government order. But like I say, once things get back to some sort of normal, I look forward to the investment continuing to go both ways. Enterprise Ireland, our enterprise agency for Irish firms, tells me that there are 300 of their client firms active across the state, with 160 companies having an office or a base in California. And on average, an Enterprise Ireland client opens an office in California every 3 or 4 weeks. So long may that continue. And I think, as the Lieutenant Governor said, a huge number of people in California who trace their ancestry back to Ireland. And I know that in normal times, the St. Patrick's Day events in San Francisco and LA are something to behold, but I expect they're probably cancelled this year. I'm not sure, but I imagine they are. And unfortunately,
you suspect correctly.
Yeah, I think only in Auckland and Sydney it's going out or something like that. But we'll try not to be too jealous. But finally, just a big thing that we're trying to put forward this St. Patrick's Week really is the future of the economy, because after the pandemic, we think that the transition that our economies are going to have to go through is both digital and green. And I think California embraces that vision too, somewhere that's very much online, very much digital, and somewhere that is very much in favor of the environment and has pressed ahead with climate action, even when the federal government was less interested in that under the previous administration. And we share that vision of decarbonising our economy totally by 2050, reaching net zero, a 51% reduction in emissions by the end of the decade. And also really investing in digital. We've signed a contract now that means that 99% of homes, farms and businesses, even in the most rural areas in Ireland, will have fibre broadband within 5 years. So 2 things we're really serious about, and a lot of Irish companies are really active in this space. Whether it's modernising agriculture to make it more green, whether it's investing in ocean energy and wind energy and building out some of the renewables that we're going to use to replace oil and gas, whether it's food production firms or cement firms, finding ways to produce things like cement and building materials in more environmentally sustainable ways. That's an area that we're building up as an area of real expertise. And I think there's huge opportunities for California and Ireland working on those two things together. So really pleased to be here, and look forward to any questions and comments.
Thank you, Tánaiste. An honor, honestly, to have both of you here, and what an interesting way to sort of combine a bunch of different issues that we have. So you touched on them. We're going to cover 4 main areas in the next 30 minutes or so. We've got the main thing, the economic relationships between Ireland and California, then the transatlantic relationship that you talked about, the pandemic, and then the environment. So let's start with California and Ireland. From the west coast of Europe to the west coast of the United States, Ireland and California have long enjoyed this relationship, this deep economic relationship especially. So obviously Silicon Valley plays a huge role in that relationship. All you have to do is walk around Dublin to see that, as we talked about as well, with all the familiar companies. So what do you see as the main drivers in the relationship? And Tánaiste, let's begin with you, and Lieutenant Governor, feel free to jump in as well.
The main drivers in the relationship?
Yeah. I mean, even where it started from, and how it's grown to where it is today.
Yeah, I think some of it is quite obvious in a way that, we have these historical and familial connections. I think for Irish people, America never feels like a foreign country. It's the same language, a shared history. Almost all of us spend some of our student years there, even if it's only for 2 weeks working in a bar, or 3 weeks in an ice cream shop or whatever. And a lot of people study there too. So, and we watch your TV and movies and everything from LA. So, America and California never feel like foreign places. So, there's that historical connection, that family connection, the same language, very similar business culture. But I think what's been huge in recent years is that cross-fertilization. US companies, particularly those based in the Bay Area, making Ireland their base in the European Union, which has been enormously important for us in going from a relatively poor country in Europe to one of the more wealthy ones. And that's something we never take for granted, and that we're very grateful for, that so many American companies have chosen Ireland as their base. But also that other side of the story as well, which, is touched on by Stripe. Some really good Irish entrepreneurs and business people setting up businesses and trading in America, and creating jobs there too, and contributing to your economic success.
Which we love, right, Lieutenant Governor?
Absolutely, we do. And let me just underscore that I completely agree. There is this very special historic relationship between Ireland and the United States that's built on the people-to-people relationships and the special place in history that Irish immigrants have in the United States. I also just want to note to what you said about St. Patrick's Day. I do know that Buena Vista is open for curbside pickup for Irish coffees and other special delicacies. And something tells me that North Beach is going to still have its crowds. Hopefully they'll be socially distant and taking care. But the other thing I thought I might just say is put the relationship, the particular California-Irish trade relationship, which we noted the statistics around, and which is punches above its weight, in the context of California's interconnectivity in the world, because there are a lot of parallels between this special relationship that we have with Ireland and the special relationship we have with Mexico, and the special relationship we have with Asia, and the special relationship we have with other transatlantic countries, whether it's Germany or Portugal or even Hungary or Greece. It really does have so much to do with California being this magnet for people from around the world who see there is something simply less stifling about this place for those dreamers who come with their ideas or with their hopes for their own ability to pursue the lives that they want to pursue, and connecting, this what's been called this open society with economic success is something that I can tell you as a former U.S. ambassador, as lieutenant governor, as the state's diplomat in my current position. This is really important for us to be talking about in the world because of so many places where xenophobia sets in and protectionism sets in. And in an attempt to protect the economic assets of the present, people will forego the possibilities that come when you have this kind of open, welcoming society that allows people to come and pursue not just their business dreams, but also their personal goals as well. So, here we are in the state of California. Really quickly, Diane, we 40% of all the containerized shipping that comes into the United States comes through our ports. We are first in manufacturing, first in foreign direct investment in the country, first in exports. Our number one export right now are zero emission vehicles. We're way out in front and have been on addressing climate change. We'll talk about that later. But during this very difficult time of this pandemic, when there are a lot of questions about who wants to stay in California and who wants to leave, what we've been doing is really looking at the fundamental elements that create a foundation of strong economic growth into the future. And these kinds of special relationships, like what we have between California and Ireland, are one really important piece of understanding why, even with churn, as our economists call it, and people who are here, people who leave, more people who come, more people who grow their businesses, that within that churn, there are some very fundamental things that we believe will keep us strong. And this relationship is one of those examples.
Well, and as you were saying that, Lieutenant Governor, I was thinking about Ireland, and I was there 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I'm not sure. And last year was the most recent visit. And there's a lot of parallels there too, right? 25 years ago, everybody spoke English. You went into cafes, you went into the pubs, and maybe I'm wrong, Tánaiste. You can correct me, Tánaiste, but it seems like that's happening. At least in Dublin, I went into pubs and I heard 4 or 5 different languages. It was a very different feel than what I felt 30 years ago there.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Certainly everyone speaks English because it's the working language in Ireland, and Irish being our native language, which a minority speak, but we all learn in school. But yeah, we're much more diverse now than we would have been in the past. I'm a person of color. My dad is Indian, my mum is Irish. But when I grew up in Dublin, I was the only boy in the class who was brown. You know what I mean? And that was odd then. It is not at all unusual now, particularly in Dublin, which is now very diverse. And it's obviously people from other parts of the European Union, because anybody who's a European citizen can live in Ireland. And lots do, particularly from Central and Eastern Europe, from Poland, Lithuania, especially. But also then people who've come to work in Ireland from all over the world. And again, a little bit like the American experience in a way, people bringing their skills and bringing their hopes and dreams to Ireland and coming here to have a better life. And we've been enriched by that. Migration has made our economy much stronger. It has made our society much more interesting. And to anyone who is critical of migration, I always say to them, just walk around the Google offices in Dublin and see how diverse and how multilingual the workforce is, and tell me that Google or Facebook would be here in Ireland if it wasn't for all these migrants. Or walk around our hospitals and see how diverse the staff are working in our hospitals, and tell me who would look after you when you're sick if it wasn't for migration. So, it's been a really good thing for Ireland that we've had that. And while there are sometimes issues, I think we've managed to avoid, some of the kind of racial tensions and racial violence that have happened in other countries. Although we don't take that for granted or by any means, or we're not complacent.
And in that sense too, is Silicon Valley, we call Dublin Silicon Valley of Europe. I'm just kind of curious, the chicken and the egg, sort of, as far as the diversity. Did Silicon Valley, did the tech entrepreneurship draw that? Was it happening? And that's what brought them there? Has it been a marriage as it happened? I'm just sort of curious.
Yeah, we sometimes call it the Silicon Docks because all of our companies tend to be by the sea and near what was Dublin's old Docklands. Definitely that's been a major draw of some very talented people, particularly younger people, to Dublin and Ireland in recent years. But it's not the only reason by any means. You'll see a lot of migrants working in agriculture as well, and I know that's a feature in California too. You'll see people working very often in food production plants, often in retail and hospitality, sometimes in areas where Irish people are less willing to work in than was the case in the past. And that's very like America in a way, having people migrating to Ireland to work in all parts of the economy, from professional tech sectors to, people who are in relatively unskilled jobs, but all essential.
Got it. And we touched on it a little bit there, Lieutenant Governor, you did as well, sort of transitioning a tiny bit to the transatlantic relationship. And with the new Biden administration, there already seems to be some improving relations, including sort of the reduction in tensions and trade issues. So, Lieutenant Governor, I'll start with you. What are your perspectives on the opportunities and challenges for the transatlantic relationship, especially given the challenges of the swings in government in both countries?
Well, Diane, I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think the world is watching what happens in Ireland right now and the way that Brexit will impact the Good Friday Agreement. And, it's interesting. I happen to be very close friends, very long time close friends with Speaker Pelosi. And I know that for her, as well as for Joe Biden, who was head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee before he became vice president, before he became president, proud Irish American, the second president of the United States to be Irish. But there is a historic legacy of the development and the advancement and the conclusion of the Good Friday Agreement that is very, very personal to many leaders. And Speaker Pelosi is very proud of her own Catholic faith, bringing peace and the U.S. engagement to help bring peace is something that is very real and very visceral to these leaders. And so watching and engaging in this transition, and we just saw, this even just yesterday, we've entered into a new phase with the EU's response to the UK's attempts to try to manage this transition when it comes to the movement of goods into Northern Ireland and what this is going to mean in terms of rebuilding checkpoints and how that could potentially create conflict or at least tension. And Tánaiste, I am sure everyone here would like to hear your perspective on this because we know of your extraordinary dedication to the preservation of the Good Friday Agreement. But we're watching this very, very closely. And I think that when you look at all the things that are happening, whether it's a free trade agreement between the US and the UK, as you say, there's been different leadership in the US, changes in leadership in Ireland, a lot of changing factors. But I will tell you that this is a North Star, as far as I can see it, for US foreign policy. And as a Californian who cares about this relationship, who's also a former US ambassador, I think this is going to be very central, certainly in the coming months.
I'll hand it right over to you, Tánaiste.
Well, thanks very much, Lieutenant Governor. I think something that's been really, really useful for us in Ireland is the extent to which so many leaders in America see the United States as one of the co-guarantors of the Good Friday Agreement. And that goes back, I suppose, to Irish America's interest in peace in Ireland. And goes back to the involvement of Bill Clinton and Senator George Mitchell in putting together the Good Friday Agreement in the first place. And while it's an agreement between the parties in Northern Ireland, and also an agreement between the British and Irish governments. America has always kind of been there at our back and at our shoulder to oversee that agreement happening and ensuring that it's honoured. And, at crucial points in the Brexit talks, the interventions of the Irish caucus in Congress, particularly Speaker Pelosi and President Biden, have really been crucial. We've never asked the United States to take sides between the UK and Ireland, and we never would. They're both really important relationships for the US. But those important comments at important times, just reminding the United Kingdom of the fragility and preciousness of the Good Friday Agreement, really were helpful. And they were done in the right way. It was never interference. It was always just a clear message, but polite reminder that America was watching. And when people in powerful parts of London know that America is watching, they pay attention to, and it really does matter. But I suppose in terms of the bigger picture, one thing I really hope to see with the change of administration is that Atlantic alliance between Europe and America being reforged. Because America gets a lot of criticism around the world, and America is far from perfect, no country is. But I'm a strong believer that America is a force for good in the world. And when America withdraws from the world, it becomes a less safe place. And potentially a less prosperous place. And for most of the past century, that Atlantic relationship between Europe and America has been the guarantor of prosperity and peace for a lot of the world. I am kind of hopeful that with the new administration in place, that there'll be an interest in reforging that alliance. And Ireland, now that the UK has left the European Union, being the closest country in the EU to America, both geographically and culturally, we would hope to become a bridge, that can help to connect the United States and the European Union a bit better.
Understood, and it's certainly. But what about the challenges to both of you? Both pop in as far as just when we do have these swings. I mean, it's the way our political system is set up, right? It is what it is. But does that stress the relationship in a different kind of way over the last 8 years? That takes longer to regroup. Does it? Can you separate some of those things, at least on the business side? I'm just sort of curious.
Yeah, well, it is democracy. So in a democracy, governments change and policies change from time to time. And even when governments change, sometimes policies don't change really. Sometimes it's just tone or emphasis and priorities that change. I have to say, broadly speaking, when it comes to Ireland, there's been, a good bipartisan approach from Republicans and Democrats alike. And even though, President Trump and a lot of the people around him were very supportive of Brexit and very critical of the European Union, we never felt that they were in any way negative towards Ireland. Quite the contrary. But like I said before, I think that the change of administration, as is always the case when there's a reset or a new administration, is an opportunity to maybe forget about some of the difficulties that arose in the last few years and reset that relationship.
Yeah, I agree, and Tánaiste, I think that bringing up the importance of the rebuilding of the relationship and the trust between the U.S. government and our allies in Europe and UK, it's just incredibly important. Diane, when I was in the Foreign Service, one of the first things that I learned was that, and I was a political appointee, so I was appointed by a Democratic president, and I was extremely involved in the Democratic Party. But lesson number one is you're representing the United States, all of the United States. You have to prepare yourself to take partisanship out of it and advance U.S. foreign policy, most of which does not change from one president to the next. We had a pretty significant change in U.S. foreign policy between the Obama administration and the Trump administration. And here we are now with the Biden administration, and there's going to be, I think, a consolidation, if you will, of some of those policies, which I think, as we've already seen, for instance, on the U.S. border, are already being changed very quickly. Certainly, trying to elevate again the emphasis on partnerships in international institutions, for sure. But some things you can't go back. You really, comes with the relationship with China, trade policy. You can't go back. We have to just go forward. And so my hope is that we will begin to reestablish some basic principles, some organizing principles, one of which is that partisanship must end at the water's edge. And if there's one thing that we can say about the 4 years of the Trump administration is this massive domestic civic revival where people want to know, what exactly does the Constitution say? How does all of this work? It has been a good thing for Americans to have a renewed appreciation, understanding, and in many ways, dedication to participation in their democracy. And I think that there's something very sensible about the Biden administration approach to foreign policy. In fact, Secretary of State Blinken gave a speech just about 2 weeks ago, trying to merge this connection between foreign policy and domestic policy, which I hope many people here will see, but I suspect will be reiterated again and again by Vice President Harris, by President Biden himself, of how important it is that Americans know and understand and have visibility of what we do in the world and why it matters to them.
Got it. Absolutely. And it is what we do, right? We change with the times. In your point, Lieutenant Governor, that foreign policy, and when you're out there, you're representing, of course, all of the United States, and that's how we bring our country together in many ways too. We touched on it a tiny bit, the pandemic. It's impacted so many lives as far as people's physical health, of course, as well as economic situation. And it's a little bit odd, right? How the large tech companies have done so well and thrived during this time. But we've talked a lot about entrepreneurship and the small and medium-sized businesses. Let's start in Ireland. How do you keep that spirit alive during these sort of challenging times?
Oh, well, it's difficult. I think in the initial phase of the pandemic, in the first wave, there was a huge sense of national solidarity, that we were all in it together, that we would all get through it. And we made sure that we have considerable financial supports for people who are out of work and businesses that have had to close. But as it goes on, it gets more difficult. That's the truth of it. The divide between those affected economically and those not has widened. And there are, increasing numbers of people who are frustrated about the lockdown. Our lockdowns are very strict. Nobody's really supposed to go within more than 5 miles from their house without an essential reason or a purpose. It is working. The number of cases is falling very dramatically. Less than 100 people in critical care and ICU at the moment in the entire country with COVID, but it's been really been really hard on people. And then this kind of mixed effect on business. Some that have actually seen demand increase, others that have been effectively closed, particularly restaurants, hospitality, events, and arts. But what's been really impressive is the extent to which some have pivoted as well. Businesses that were never online before going online, and we're helping them with that. And businesses shifting their model from attending in person and dropping in and being present to delivery and click and collect. And companies that were used to running big conferences with people present now doing all that online. So business people are amazing in that way. Their ingenuity and their ability to adapt happened in education too as well, with so much online learning. But what I'd love to do now is just grab and keep the good things and then have a mixed new world, where we keep all the good stuff, but we get to go back and do all the fun things we can't do anymore. I imagine Coachella is off and everything else too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's on my bucket list.
We'll get you out here for the next one for sure. And Lieutenant Governor, California is slowly recovering. We're starting to open up a little bit. What are the long-term plans to help some of these smaller businesses and this entrepreneurial spirit that we feed here, that is a big part of who we are?
Well, this pandemic has hit everybody hard in their own specific ways, but I don't think that any sector has been hit harder than small and medium-sized businesses, particularly the service industry and the tourist industry. And that's had repercussions as well, by the way, with the taxes that are collected on hotels by local jurisdictions. So we've got cities and counties that are struggling to be able to meet their payrolls. So we have a big challenge there. On the other hand, as it happens, those at the top who primarily were able to continue to work from home, who had the kind of broadband internet access necessary to do that, living in communities that had strong internet, that companies that made sure that their employees had the tools that they needed to be able to work from home and facilitated it, they did okay. So the California budget, very surprisingly to us until we started to see the signs, has a $15 billion budget surplus this year. So
it's crazy, right?
Pretty extraordinary. And it's, personal income tax, it's taxes on that revenue that came in from IPOs, revenue that came in because the stock market is at historic highs. So people were, making those changes, buying and selling those assets and paying capital gains tax. We don't know if this will happen next year, but for this year, we have this great tool, which is the budget surplus. So one of the things the governor did was he replenished our rainy day fund, which is very important to have that fiscal prudency, pay down pension obligations, also very important to fiscal prudency. The next most important priority has been to go invest in small and medium-sized businesses. So this is really something, $2 billion in grants going to those businesses. And if anybody is watching who's interested in getting that support, please go to the state website, covid19.ca.gov, to see how you can apply for those grants. And then, of course, we also need to make sure that we're taking care of those who are really struggling to keep their head above water. Now, that is something that we've done, again, with our budget as a tool. Very first time ever, created our own stimulus, a $600 payment to anyone who essentially qualifies for the earned income tax credit. Also important for the stimulation of the local economy, that people have those funds to be able not just to pay their rent, to buy food, and to use to be able to put gas in the car to get to their essential job if they have one. So these are very important tools. And then, of course, the federal stimulus has been critically important to us as well. That supported a lot of the programs that we've prioritized, things like Project Home Key, Project Room Key, to help with our homeless challenges here. And the federal package, which President Biden just signed a few days ago, that the American Rescue Act will bring another $41 billion to California, a large portion of that going to local government, city and county governments, to help them clean up their balance sheets so that they're able to manage their way through this crisis as well. So as the governor has said, the light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter every day. We are reopening. Restaurants are able in many counties now to have indoor dining. Shops are able to reopen. Hairdressers, of course, have been open for a while. Essential work has been ongoing. Schools, thank goodness, are starting to reopen every day more and more. So we're getting there. And with the tools of our budget surplus plus the Federal Rescue Act, I think that we're all poised and positioned to be able to come roaring back. And as Tánaiste, I had to learn Tánaiste last time we met. Now I need to learn the Tánaiste. But as you noted at the very beginning, building back. Oh, we can't hear you, Tánaiste.
It's the mute, but if it's any easier, Deputy Prime Minister is fine because
I know, I love it. So building back better through investments in the green economy is a big part of what we're doing, and then of course education. California's economic success, and Diane, you're there. Professor Dwyer, you're there at Berkeley right now. Go Bears! But our system of public higher education in this state is second to none, and is investing in our K-12, but very importantly, our system of public higher education is going to help us rebound as well.
It is interesting, sort of the parallels with the two countries, and with Ireland having a positive GDP growth as well during these difficult times. Okay, so last question. I promise we get to the economy. We're running a little bit out of time. So climate change, is front of mind along with everything else. What steps are Ireland and California taking to meet some of the ambitious targets under the Paris Climate Agreement at this point? If we could just jump in, both of you. Tánaiste, if you would like to start, that would be lovely.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're a little bit behind, and we do need to catch up. Emissions have been falling for the last couple of years before the pandemic, and now are falling a bit more because of the pandemic. But our new coalition is made up of three parties: my party, another centre party, and also the Green Party. And a big part of our plan now is to increase our ambition on climate action. So we'll have new climate legislation, new climate law quite soon, putting into law the 51% emission reduction target by 2030, and then a zero by 2050, with carbon budgets that each government department and each minister is going to be responsible for. We have a carbon tax which goes up every year, which is a real clear message to market and consumers that these are technologies that you need to get out of over the next couple of years. We've done something that I think California probably won't want to do, is we've banned exploration for oil, and we'll also ban exploration for gas as well, because these are technologies that we're phasing out, and it doesn't make sense to make 10, 20 or 30-year investments in them. But we have some big challenges in other areas too. Big opportunity in electricity, going renewable, a huge wind resource. And we have the ambition of becoming electricity exporters to the rest of Europe. But a huge challenge then in agriculture in particular, because we've a big dairy and beef sector, a lot of cows that produce a lot of emissions, but also sustain a lot of farm families, and a real challenge there to plant more forests, to re-wet bogs, to embrace biodiversity, and also try to reduce our emissions from agriculture, but to do it in such a way that doesn't damage the rural economy or the fabric of traditional Irish life, which can be very rural sometimes.
Absolutely. And preserving that's important as well. And Lieutenant Governor?
So just very briefly, Diane, I think it's pretty well known that California has the most ambitious climate goals in the country. We stayed in Paris during the Trump administration. We're very happy that the federal government is back in, and our climate goals being carbon neutral by 2045 drive our policy around investment. The governor announced just a few months ago now that by 2035, only zero emission vehicles will be able to be sold in California as new cars. And, we are the largest consumer market in the country. So when we set those kinds of goals and targets, the whole industry for the country follows. We know that, and we work with industry to make sure that these goals are really achievable. And we know that they are, because our state government is in constant communication with the private sector, and we know that we'll be able to get there. So for everybody watching who's looking at potentially increasing their investment in California, I strongly encourage more Irish investment in green tech, in the clean economy. The market is here to be able to to serve and grow a business around this. And let me just actually conclude going back to this company Stripe, which I was reading a little bit about in the last few days. And it's incredible with their success. One of the things that they're focused on is carbon capture and how to basically suck carbon out of the air, which we're going to have to figure out, not just for our own climate goals, but for Paris as well. So young, bright minds know that there is a future in this, that there is a business future in this, but more importantly, that the future depends on being able to reduce emissions and keep our planet from warming more than 2 degrees, which will have devastating effects geopolitically. And one more just note, Tánaiste, about wind. Very much look forward to working with you and your consulates regularly and more around offshore wind. I think that we have some similar challenges of how to facilitate it. And we're really committed to expanding our footprint, if you will, in offshore wind off the coast of California.
I'll do a trade with you, Eleni, if we can. We'll trade our wind for your sun. We can really do with some of that right now.
I like that. That's a brilliant way to.
We'll talk to the leprechaun.
Great in so many ways. It's incredible. Thank you both, Lieutenant Governor and Tánaiste. Happy early St. Patrick's Day, everyone. That was wildly interesting and sort of exciting at the same time. And Robert, I will hand it back off to you. Robert, I think you're muted. The beauty of tech, right? Well, while we're waiting for that, we're looking forward to perhaps by next St. Patrick's Day, we'll be able to celebrate properly and enjoy our time together as Californians and celebrating our Irish heritage at the same time. So, and Tánaiste, when Coachella is back on, the Lieutenant Governor and I will call you and invite you to California for just for that.
I'm gonna hold you to that promise.
Okay, I haven't been either, so I'm looking forward to going. My kids have gone, and I haven't quite done it yet. So, Robert, is your mic not working?
We'll task Robert to get tickets for next year. So,
what's that?
We'll make sure Robert gets the tickets for next year.
Exactly, for sure. Yep, we still the mic isn't working there, but we'll. It's fun. All the love, the fun of tech, right? It happens to the best of us along the way. Okay, so while we're going a little bit of time, how about Tánaiste? How are you going to celebrate St. Patrick's Day tomorrow? And they have to be appropriate plans, and you can't go more than 5 miles from your house. So follow the rules.
Well, you're allowed to go into work, so that's what I'll be doing. Like actually, for politicians and for members of government, St. Patrick's Day is always a working day anyway. You know, because we're around the world doing St. Patrick's Day events. It just so happens that this year we're going to have to do it all online. So the Taoiseach will be meeting President Biden online and somehow exchanging the shamrock virtually. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but I'm sure they've come up with something. But I think for most people, it's going to be pretty tough actually, because people are going to be stuck at home and will be able to spend some time with their household and maybe go for a walk, but not do very much else. So it's kind of sad in a way, but I do think we'll look back on it in years to come and be more grateful for the freedoms that we have and the lives that we have and the privileges that we have. And I think the pandemic is going to teach us a lot as a society.
I couldn't agree more. And also just that concept of it did slow us down a little bit and maybe refocus what's important. We were all sort of on the hamster a little bit. And refocusing that, I think, will help all of us, I hope, although some were hit so much harder than others. And Lieutenant Governor, can you share with us how the Greeks like to celebrate St. Patrick's Day?
So, Diane, this is the second time you've mentioned it. So I don't know if you ever read the book, How the Irish Saved Civilization. But a big part of that is saving the ancient Greek texts. So there is a very strong connection between Ireland and ancient Greece that we Greeks know. And, there's all sorts of stories and archaeological evidence of Philip of Macedonia making it up there. And
I like
his troops with the Irish. But, it's such a great, wonderful tradition. And I know it's so hard. It's another wonderful holiday where we're all so accustomed, particularly in San Francisco, where I live. My goodness, the streets are full of the parades, the parties, but we're almost through this. And so I just encourage people, if you want to do that, drive by if you're in San Francisco to the Buena Vista and pick up an Irish coffee. But we're just, we can really see the return to normal in our sights ahead. So staying close to home and taking care is just really important. But
we're almost
there. Yeah.
Exactly. I'll be making a little Irish soda bread tomorrow, my grandmother's recipe. So that will be fun. That'll be a nice way for us to start. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much, both of you, for being here and taking time out of your days to share sort of your perspectives of both economies. Can't say thank you enough for me, for Robert, whose Mike decided to die. And so, Robert, thank you for hosting this and the Consul General for making this happen. And so what I would like to suggest is the folks who are participating, hang around. You can join all the networking and the expo section still. They're going to continue. So don't leave. We're wrapping up our section, but all of the networking and the expos are still going on. On that note, happy early St. Patrick's Day. Thank you all so much.
St. Patrick's Day.
And we'll see you next year, hopefully with more of a celebration outside versus just privately. So take care. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.